Schumann's scenes of childhood were composed from February to March in 1838. Schumann's next character cycle reveals the incredible emotional range of his genius as he turned from the innocence of childhood to the dark and strange world of Kreisleriana. The title comes from a literary work by the fascinating writer and composer ETA Hoffmann, who was the author behind the Tales of Hoffmann, The Nutcracker, and other famous works. Schumann's Kreisleriana evokes the fantastic world of Hoffmann and his fictional character, the eccentric musician named Johannes Kreisler. The dark power and the radical new world Schumann was exploring actually frightened Clara, to whom the work was supposed to have been dedicated. Kreisleriana was composed with unbelievable speed in April and May of 1838, just weeks after the scenes of childhood were finished. In fact, Schumann claimed that a large part of this cycle had been worked out in only 4 days. Schumann considered Kreisleriana his greatest character cycle. Kreisleriana is dedicated to Frédéric Chopin. Schumann had originally dedicated this great cycle to Clara, but he was forced to change the dedication because of the violent objections of Friedrich Wieck, Clara's father. Wieck made life unbearable for Robert and Clara, who were deeply in love. However, they were finally able to marry in 1840, and their first child, Marie, was born in 1841. In fact, it was Marie's 7th birthday in 1848 that inspired Schumann's return to the theme of childhood, this time with 3 young daughters and a newborn son. The Album for the Young became Schumann's most popular work. Schumann said that many of these pieces were directly inspired by family life. As usual, the pieces poured out of Schumann with incredible speed, one after another. Although he began the album with little pieces for Marie's birthday, Schumann greatly extended the technical and musical skill needed for many of the pieces. In its final form, the album contained pieces such as the Prelude and Fugue, the War Song, Vintage Song, the Italian Mariners, and several others that were composed with advanced technique in mind, which for Schumann usually meant Clara. In the album, we find subjects who are identified by nationality. There are musical depictions of Italian mariners, German sailors, and an intriguing Sicilian. we hear pieces that are in the style of famous composers. The Elegy for Felix Mendelssohn takes the form of a song without words. People from many different walks of life are represented. There are character pieces that describe soldiers, horsemen, and happy farmers. At the end of the Reaper's Song, we hear the hunters returning from a hunt. In Scheherazade, Schumann tells the sad story of this exotic character from the famous collection of stories called 1001 Arabian Nights. Even the legendary Krampus, the bad Santa of German folklore, makes an appearance in the piece titled Knave Rupert. It is fascinating to compare pieces with exactly the same subject matter from the album for the young with the scenes of childhood. For example, The Wild Rider and The Rocking Horse Rider. If we were not aware of the dates of composition, we might guess that Wild Rider from the album for the young, composed in 1848, was the earlier version of the same idea that we hear in the Rocking Horse Rider, composed in 1838 from the Scenes of Childhood. Here are two pieces, both in E minor. In the album, Schumann captures his daughter Marie's grief over the loss of her beloved pet bird in the piece titled First Loss. In the Scenes of Childhood, Schumann suggests the uneasy thoughts that keep the troubled child awake in the piece called Child Falling Asleep. Once again, we might guess that the piece called First Loss from the Album for the Young was composed earlier than the piece from the Scenes of Childhood. However, many of the pieces in the Album for the Young seem to have been composed for adults, such as the untitled pieces marked by the symbol of 3 stars. These pieces have very little to do with childhood. No one knows exactly why Schumann marked these pieces with 3 stars, but I think that the 3 stars were Schumann's code for these adult pieces. Let's compare one of these 3-star pieces from the Album for the Young with the famous piece from the Scenes of Childhood that Schumann called Traumerei. Both pieces are quite slow, and both are in F major. Both have beautiful melodies and expressive harmonies. Without the repeats, both pieces have exactly the same number of measures. What is the essential difference between these 2 pieces in F major? The passionate 3-star piece from the album seems to represent Schumann's Florestan persona. We can even imagine this piece as a love song from Robert to Clara. Traumerei, by its very title, seems to represent the poet and dreamer Schumann called Eusebius. The secret to interpreting Schumann's music is to find out which persona we are portraying. Are we the passionate Florestan, the dreamy Eusebius, or, as Schumann indicated for some of the pieces in the David League dances, are we a combination of Florestan and Eusebius? If we wish to be great Schumann interpreters, we must use our own unlimited imagination, just like the genius who created this great music.